Hello guys, support us and subscribe to our channel, give likes and write comments. Today we will read
Forbidden Love.
Well, let's get started.
The bright lights of the train stations kept Mary awake for a long time. The train was steadily taking her to the place where, the previous summer, her resort romance had begun so timidly. At that time, she and her husband had come to rest in a small resort town on the seashore. The sunny city tenderly and amiably welcomed its holidaymakers. In the hot southern sun were green palm trees, and the fresh smell of the sea was in the air. It was there that she first met Jim. They met for the first time in the shade of a cozy courtyard under a towering palm tree. They talked many times during their vacation. In the mornings they would meet to run their own errands for the day, and in the evenings they would share the impressions of the day they had spent. Mary sensed that Jim cared for her, but was afraid to reciprocate, though her heart sincerely wanted to plunge into his black eyes, as if into the darkness of a southern night. The more often they met, the more Mary realized that those eyes, like a magnet, attracted her. The time flew by, and the green palm trees and the smoothness of the night sea were replaced by train tickets, trains, and the road home. Taking Mary and her husband to the train station, Jim and Mary looked at each other for a long time, and it was as if fate itself had given them a few extra minutes in city traffic, and the sky rained down to mourn their separation. And now the train was taking her farther and farther away, but Jim's black eyes didn't seem to leave her for a moment. On the top shelf of the train, Mary blamed herself for her indecision, barely able to hold back her tears. When she arrived home, she resolved to forget Jim, but at night he came more and more often in her dreams. Going through the summer pictures, Mary realized more and more that she should have at least talked to him. Then she decided to track Jim down on the internet, especially since there was a reason for it. Leaving a comment on the page of his site, she began to live her old life, plunging into everyday life, which flew by gray and ordinary, and only the bright memories of summer gave them some special, incomprehensibly bright shade. And what was her surprise when his voice sounded in the phone receiver. Joyfully he talked about himself, inquired about Mary's life, told her the news of the town, and, of course, recalled their fleeting encounters on dark, southern evenings. Jim often called Mary, and she was used to hearing his voice in the morning, but they both wanted to see each other. And finally the long-awaited vacation, and the same train rushes Mary to where the beauties, palm trees roasting under the scorching rays of the southern sun, where the warm sea waves beat against the pier, and the moon track at night flows its mysterious light. But most importantly there where she waited so sweet and desirable black eyes. Wrapped in plaid, to the pounding of the wheels, Mary slept until morning. When she awoke, the southern sun was beaming brightly. The bustling train station was seeing the trains off and on. Jim arrived at the station long before the train arrived. It seemed that even the circumstances themselves hastened their meeting. There was no traffic on the roads at this hour of the morning, and the traffic lights, as if in cahoots, winked at him cheerfully with green lights. After parking his car, Jim made his way to the platform and waited for the train to arrive. Sitting down on the bench, he unwound in his memory for the 1000th time, as if he was afraid of losing every thread with which fate had tied their thoughts and feelings. Exactly 1 year ago, by chance, by the will of fate, he had first met and acquainted with Mary. Then the look of her blue eyes like an arrow pierced his heart. Jim had met many women, but in Mary he saw something special. He was drawn to the mysterious look in her eyes, her sincere smile, and her resonant, joyful laugh. Those few days turned his whole life upside down. He remembered them every minute afterward. Every morning, he tried to see her when she woke up to wish her good morning and then to follow her leaving for the beach for a long time. He stole a glimpse of the gentle sea breeze playing in her hair as if to tease him. Every evening he waited for her long enough to meet that enchanting gaze and to hold her for as long as possible with questions about the day. And then, as the darkness of the southern night hastily covered everything around him, Jim watched her, standing on the balcony, as if mesmerized, admiring the beauty of the night sky with its millions of stars, the smooth sea, where the huge moon was reflected as in a mirror, and the fabulous outlines of the mountains. In that moment Jim could not take his eyes off her. He understood that each of them had their own, long delineated life. At the same time he realized that he was in love with this girl and life without her was like a black and white movie, and no amount of even the brightest colors would be able to blot out the blue of her eyes. No matter how hard Jim tried not to think about the day of Mary's departure, so inexorably fast approaching, that day had come. The night before, Jim had waited a long time for her. As his eyes met for the umpteenth time, he realized that he had made a mistake in not confessing his feelings to Mary. He never slept at night, and in the morning he had to take Mary and her husband to the train station. Then many, many sleepless nights he remembered the way they had furtively looked at each other, and the look in her blue eyes seemed so sad. And Jim himself, as best he could, tried to hide from her the pall of sadness that came over his eyes. And only when the last car of the passenger train disappeared from view did Jim feel a strong pinch in his chest. He sat down on the bench, lit a cigarette, and let his emotions run free. He did not know how much time had passed, and it was only when he had coped with himself that he decided that he had to move on. When he returned home, he bemoaned himself for not even getting Mary's phone number. Meanwhile, the resort town continued to live its bustling life, welcoming and seeing off vacationers. In the whirlpool of everyday life Jim tried to forget his infatuation, but the blue eyes and such a sweet, sincere smile gave him no peace, and in every girl he saw that very Mary. As time passed, the velvet season was ending on the southern coast, and the last vacationers were leaving this paradise with regret. Jim still couldn't help himself. He knew he couldn't fool himself, but it was almost hopeless to find Mary. Deciding that no situation was hopeless, he called a friend and asked for help. A couple of days later, Jim already knew Mary's address and phone number. How frantically his heart pounded when he dialed her number. When he heard that clear, joyful voice, his only regret was that he hadn't done it sooner. They began to call each other often, but he waited until summer in hopes of seeing Mary. Oh, how he'd rejoiced when she'd told him she was coming here again on vacation, and when she'd called and told him the exact date of her arrival, it seemed to him that even the sun shone brighter and the southern nights were brighter and shorter. And here he was again at the train station. Hearing the announcement of the train's arrival, Jim got up from the bench. In the distance, the first carriage appeared. Slowly approaching the platform, the train stopped. Passengers one by one left the carriage. Jim froze in anticipation. Meeting his gaze, he realized that he would never lose that blue-eyed gift of fate again.
Thank you! Learn English with us easily and fun. Support us and subscribe to our channel. Give likes and write comments. Watch new videos on our channel every day. See you soon and bye-bye.